the unspoken shift that changes everything. What happens when men stop showing up emotionally? Not just walking away from relationships, but stepping back from playing the roles women unconsciously expect of them. Something deep and disruptive begins to unfold. And it's not about dating games, gender wars, or power struggles. It's about a profound psychological shift that Carl Jung understood better than anyone. Jung didn't write about modern romance, but his ideas offer a map to understand a rising tension today. Men are pulling away, emotionally, mentally, sometimes physically. And women are reacting with confusion, anger, even grief. What's going on isn't just social, it's archetypal. It's about projections collapsing, the end of illusions, and the start of something raw, honest, and transformative. This video explores the psychological earthquake that happens when men stop being emotionally available to women. Through the lens of Carl Jung's theories, projection, anima, animus dynamics, shadow confrontation, and individuation, we'll unpack how the entire relational field shifts. This is a journey into the psyche, not pop culture. And once you understand what Jung saw, never see gender dynamics the same way again. 1. Jungian foundations, projection, anima, and individuation. Carl Jung believed that every person carries within them elements of the opposite gender. In men, this inner feminine is called the anima, a constellation of feelings, intuitions, and emotional sensitivities often repressed in outward behavior. For women, it's the animus, the inner masculine force of logic, opinion, and strength. These inner archetypes shape how we perceive others, especially romantic partners. Jung argued that we rarely fall in love with a person, we fall in love with a projection. We project our unconscious anima or animus onto someone else, hoping they'll complete us. A man might idealize a woman as his emotional salvation. A woman might see a man as her protector, her rescuer, or her answer to loneliness. These projections create attraction, passion, and drama, but not always reality. The process of individuation, central to Jungian psychology, is about withdrawing these projections. It's the journey of seeing others as they truly are, not as mirrors of your unconscious needs. When men step back and stop being available to absorb projections, something powerful happens. The illusion breaks, and both people are forced to confront themselves. 2. Women can't project, the emotional fallout. When a man withdraws emotionally, the woman may feel abandoned, but what's really happening is that her projection no longer has a host. The image of the ideal man, the rock, the answer, the protector, begins to crumble. She might say, "You've changed," or "You're distant," but what's collapsing is the fantasy, not necessarily the person. This collapse often triggers intense emotional reactions. Confusion, grief, and even rage can surface. Why? Because the unconscious self was invested in that projection. She didn't just love the man, she loved what he symbolized. His withdrawal feels like an identity threat. Without him, who is she? That's the uncomfortable question that now has space to emerge. But here's the key: this crisis can lead to transformation. When projections collapse, the woman is invited to meet her own animus, to become her own anchor, guide, and protector. The emptiness she feels isn't just loss, it's a space waiting to be filled by her own growth. It's the beginning of real individuation. 3. The man's perspective, freedom or isolation. For the man, becoming unavailable isn't always a decision, it's often a survival move. He might feel suffocated by expectations he never agreed to fulfill. If a woman projects her emotional needs onto him, he becomes a container for someone else's psyche. After a while, he checks out emotionally, mentally, or physically. When he steps back, he may feel guilt or confusion. But he also might feel a strange kind of clarity. Without the constant need to validate, rescue, or prove, he begins to see who he is outside of relationship dynamics. He encounters his own anima, not in another, but within. This is often a turning point in a man's life. But it's not easy. Withdrawal can be met with hostility or emotional backlash. Friends and family might criticize. The woman might lash out. Society might label him emotionally immature. But if the man stays the course, not as avoidance, but as conscious inner work, he opens the door to psychological wholeness. Jung called this the path of maturity, reclaiming one's projections and growing into a complete human being. 4. The cultural impact, shifting gender roles and emotional economy. On a societal level, the growing unavailability of men is more than a dating trend, it's a reflection of deeper archetypal shifts. For generations, women were encouraged to seek completion in men. Fairy tales, films, and culture reinforced the idea that he would come and make her life meaningful. Men, in turn, were rewarded for being providers, protectors, or emotional targets. Now, that dynamic is breaking. Women are rising in independence and economic power. Men are questioning roles that no longer serve them. But with the old structures gone, a vacuum forms. Women may find themselves successful but emotionally unfulfilled. Men may feel freer but more disconnected. It's not regression, it's a transitional phase. Jung foresaw this era. He predicted that as people began to confront their inner opposites, men with their anima, women with their animus, the need for gendered completion would dissolve. Relationships would no longer be about filling a void but about sharing completeness. But before that vision is realized, the collapse of old projections must occur. And that collapse often starts when men stop being available in the way they used to be. 5. The relationship dynamic, how withdrawal restructures intimacy. Imagine a couple where the woman leans on the man for emotional support, validation, and connection. At first, he gives it freely. He listens, comforts, and stabilizes. But over time, he feels drained, not because he doesn't care, but because the emotional exchange feels one-sided. He begins to pull away. He stops texting as often, stops reacting emotionally, or avoids deep conversations. She notices. Her anxiety rises. She accuses him of changing. He feels misunderstood. A cycle begins. Her panic increases his retreat, which increases her panic. What's really happening is that her projection is collapsing. She no longer sees him as her rock, and now she has to confront her own emotional needs. This is the moment of reckoning. If both people can step back and reflect, they might enter a new phase of the relationship, one built on authenticity, not roles. If not, the relationship may break under the weight of unmet projections. Either way, the withdrawal has acted as a catalyst for change. 6. A path to growth, individuation for both genders. When projections collapse, pain surfaces, but so does potential. For women, this is a chance to meet their own inner masculine. Instead of seeking strength outside, they begin to embody it. They realize they don't need a man to validate their worth. They can provide structure, logic, and protection for themselves. For men, withdrawal offers a chance to finally listen to the emotions they've long buried. They stop outsourcing their anima to women and begin to feel. Not perform emotions, but actually experience and express them. They reconnect with vulnerability, intuition, and compassion without fear of being weak. In Jung's ideal, both man and woman become psychologically whole. They no longer need each other to complete them, they choose each other from a place of fullness. It's not dependency. It's conscious connection. 7. Real-world reflections, therapy, coaching, and modern dating. Modern therapists and relationship coaches are seeing this dynamic play out everywhere. Men overwhelmed by emotional labor they didn't sign up for. Women crushed by partners who won't open up. Both projecting. Both misunderstanding. In therapy, the work is to withdraw projections. To ask, what part of myself am I expecting my partner to carry? What needs am I avoiding by demanding them from someone else? For many, these realizations are uncomfortable, but they're also liberating. Dating coaches now talk about emotional unavailability not as a character flaw but as a boundary, sometimes a necessary one. Emotional availability doesn't mean being endlessly open, it means being real, integrated, and not playing a role. That's a radical shift, and one Jung helped set in motion. 8. Critique. Jung's blind spots and cultural challenges. Of course, Jung wasn't perfect. His view of gender was steeped in early 20th century European norms. He associated femininity with eros, relationship, and masculinity with logos, logic. Today, we recognize that emotional intelligence and rationality are not gendered traits, they're human traits. Some feminist scholars criticize Jung for reinforcing traditional roles. Others argue his animus theory excludes non-binary identities and reinforces a heteronormative lens. These critiques are valid and important. The task is to extract the wisdom of Jung's ideas without being trapped by their historical context. Modern Jungians are evolving the theory. They speak of inner opposites not as gendered roles but as energies we all contain. And they use projection theory not just for romance but for everything, from politics to parenting. Jung's ideas, when updated, still carry tremendous power. Conclusion: why everything changes, and why that's a good thing. When men stop being emotionally available, it feels like abandonment, but it can also be an invitation. An invitation to drop the roles, confront the self, and finally build relationships on truth, not illusion. The collapse of projection is not the end, it's the beginning of individuation. Carl Jung showed us that love without self-awareness is fantasy. We don't just fall in love, we fall into our unconscious. Withdrawal, though painful, can snap us out of it. It can push us to grow, integrate, and become fully human. In the end, the greatest relationships aren't built by people who complete each other, but by people who have completed themselves. That's what happens when men stop being available in the old way. Everything changes, and that's exactly what needs to happen.